You know, we always called each other Goodfellas. Like you'd say to somebody, "You're gonna like this guy, he's alright. He's a good fella, he's one of us."
Maury's wigs don't come off!
I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Director Martin Scorsese's acclaimed decade-spanning mob saga, Goodfellas, is often hailed as one of the greatest cinematic experiences in history. Based on the non-fiction book Wise Guy by Nicholas Pileggi and filled with outrageous moments of criminal behavior, Goodfellas has prompted film buffs and historians to question how faithful the movie is to reality and what might have been fabricated to create such an all-time classic motion picture. Get the best seat in the house and find out what the f*** really happened to this movie. At the time, celebrated filmmaker Martin Scorsese initially didn't want to make a hardcore mob movie, but once he read Pileggi's riveting biography of gangster Henry Hill, he enthusiastically beamed,
And he said, "I've been looking for this book for years." I said, "Well, I've been waiting for this phone call all my life."
with a preternatural understanding of these character types from his time growing up in Little Italy, New York. Scorsese wanted to treat the material with tremendous respect and the utmost fidelity, even using real mobsters as extras for several scenes. The primary characters in Goodfellas are based on real people, and all of the major events truly happened. The half-Irish, half-Sicilian Henry Hill began his life of organized crime in the Italian mafia in 1955 at the age of 11, and he spent the next 30 years climbing the ranks of the Lucchese crime family before turning state's evidence and joining the Federal Witness Protection Program. Hill's on-screen counterpart, Ray Liotta, isn't exactly a spitting image at 11 years younger and 3 inches taller than the real-life gangster. Still, after seeing Liotta in Jonathan Demme's Something Wild, Scorsese felt the actor had an explosive energy that was perfect for the part.
I swear my fucking mother, if you touch her again, you're dead!
While Liotta plays Henry as a charmer with sexual magnetism, in reality, Hill was nowhere near as charismatic or confident. The character of Jimmy Conway, played by Robert De Niro, is based on Irish mobster James "Jimmy the Gent" Burke. De Niro's size also didn't match the real Jimmy, a hulking figure at 6'5" and around 250 pounds. Still, De Niro was determined to accurately portray Burke's behavior, using real money on set and telephoning the real Henry Hill several times a day to confirm how Burke carried himself, held a cigarette, and even applied ketchup. As one of the Lucchese crime family's most ruthless henchmen and brilliant masterminds, Burke's violent nature is actually toned down for the film. According to all accounts, Jimmy the Gent was much more brutal in real life. Tommy Devito, played to the tune of an Oscar victory by Joe Pesci,
Oh, it's my privilege, thank you.
is modeled after gangster Thomas DeSimone, who was nicknamed Two-Gun Tommy from carrying a pair of pistols in a paper bag. There's a significant age disparity with the character. Pesci was 46 years old when he played the role, but the real Tommy disappeared at age 28. While they're shown growing up together in the film, Hill was actually 7 years older than Tommy, and spent his early years running with Paulie's son, Lenny Vario, who is not in the film at all. Additionally, the real DeSimone was an imposing 6'2" and 225 pounds, quite a divergence from Pesci's stature. And believe it or not, Tommy's volatile nature was actually downplayed in the film. Even still, the real Henry Hill has gone on record that Pesci's portrayal and attitude are at least 90% accurate, size difference notwithstanding.
Get the fuck out of here!
Pesci seemed to have proficiently channeled DeSimone's menacing mad dog aura and aggressive demeanor. Speaking of which, that memorable restaurant scene that features some of the most quoted dialogue in cinematic history?
I'm funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you? I make you laugh?
This was also based on an actual experience, but it was Joe Pesci's and not Henry Hill's. As a young waiter, Pesci had once told a mob-connected customer he was funny and received a similarly unexpected response. When he mentioned this interaction to Scorsese and Liotta, the script was altered to include the now famous exchange, but none of the other actors in the scene were made aware, so the director captured their genuine surprise at the terrifying tirade.
What the fuck is so funny about me?
Paul Cicero, played by Paul Sorvino, is patterned after the real-life Lucchese crime capo Paul Vario. While the physical likeness is quite accurate, the temperament of the character differs drastically. In the film, Paulie is a composed gentleman of refinement and taste, depicted as quietly intimidating. In reality, Vario was known for his vicious and unpredictable temper, once ordering his men to bludgeon a waiter who accidentally spilled wine on his wife's dress. Beginning in 1955, the film opens with the iconic line,
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Henry Hill's teenage years reinforce that very sentiment as he eagerly participates in illegal activity on behalf of the Italian mob. However, in reality, Hill did show signs of reluctance towards mafia life during his teenage years and made several attempts to leave it behind. His real father did disapprove of the criminal lifestyle, but after his first arrest at age 16 for stolen credit cards, Hill enlisted in the army a year later. Despite being unable to read until his 20s, Hill served 3 years in the 82nd Airborne Division before returning to a life of organized crime in New York. Likely in the interest of time and narrative focus, this part of Hill's life is left out of the film.
Hello, Henry.
Henry's Jewish girlfriend, Karen, played by Lorraine Bracco, was based on Karen Friedman, who did get hitched to Henry in 1965, and by all accounts, Hill did truly convert to Judaism to demonstrate his commitment to her. In the film, the couple is shown to have 2 daughters, although in reality they had a daughter and a son. In 1967, the real Henry Hill and Tommy DeSimone did pull off the Air France heist shown in the film, but the movie shows them gaining access to the depot after being given a key by airline employee Robert "Frenchie" McMahon. In reality, while McMahon did tip off the mobsters to the $420,000 in cash, the entry key was held safely by a different guard who couldn't be bribed. After weeks of surveilling this guard, Henry and Tommy arranged to get the man drunk and hired a prostitute to seduce him at a motel, during which they stole the key, duplicated it in a hurry, replaced it, and got away scot-free. These story details were compressed to maintain the bullet-like pace that Scorsese envisioned. One of the more harrowing scenes in the movie comes when Tommy impulsively guns down Spider during a poker game in the basement of Jimmy's club, Robert's Lounge. According to Hill, this fatal sequence is nearly identical to what really happened to Michael Spider Gianco. Tommy did shoot Spider in the foot after the barman forgot to serve it, and a week later, Spider told Tommy to,
"Why don't you go fuck yourself, Tommy?"
After being taunted again. Jimmy then gave Spider a wad of cash for standing up for himself, with Tommy responding by rapidly blasting him with a .45. What is not depicted, according to Hill, is that Spider's corpse was hacked into pieces and buried beneath Robert's lounge. Similarly, the gruesome fate of Billy Batts really did occur in 1970. In the film, Batts is murdered in Henry's club, the Suite, during his welcome home party from the Clink. After Batts makes disparaging remarks to Jimmy and Tommy,
"Now go home and get your fucking shine box."
Motherfucking mutt!
the grisly murder is presented as more of an immediate emotional response as Tommy pistol whips Batts while Jimmy stomps away. This happened, but 2 weeks after Batts returned home and insulted both men. Additionally, the real Billy Batts Bentvina, who was a legitimate made man in the powerful Gambino crime family, had demanded that Jimmy hand over his loan shark racket, which also contributed to the greedy Burke planning his elimination. As depicted in the film, Bentvina really did survive the initial attack and began pounding the trunk of the car as the men drove to dispose of him, and they did detour to the home of Tommy's mother to collect supplies. But according to Hill, Batts was never shot to death, but rather beaten with a shovel and a tire iron, and was stabbed 30 or 40 times. Also as shown, Bentvina's fetid corpse had to be exhumed months later, when the property was sold to real estate developers. Not included was how, according to Hill, Bentvina's body was then squashed in a car crusher in a New Jersey junkyard. Hill admitted to having nightmares for years over the butchering of Billy Batts.
What do you like, the leg or the wing, Henry?
In 1974, Jimmy and Henry are pinched by the feds upon return from Florida and sent to the Slammer.
Now take me to jail.
While in prison, the mafiosos appear to own the joint and live like kings by bribing the guards. Although this feels exaggerated for the film, the way the gangsters are seen living was quite honest. According to Scorsese,
we give the impression of it being breezier than it was. To add to the irony of it, with the music that's playing and that sort of thing and getting lobsters. But this was what we had guards who told us this is the reality too. I mean, it was all there. It's all there. I mean, there's certain people who were privileged.
The film also presents the famed Lufthansa airline heist with relative accuracy. It was the biggest cash robbery in North America at the time. Nearly $6 million, which would be around $23 million today, stolen from the Lufthansa terminal at JFK Airport on December 11, 1978. The event is depicted close to fact, including the introduction of the scam by bookie Martin Krugman, renamed Maury Kessler in the film, along with Jimmy's avaricious and paranoid descent into homicide once it was completed. After scoring all that cash, the real Jimmy's dim-witted subordinates began buying flashy items like Cadillacs and mink furs. Incensed by the careless spending, and afraid he'd be arrested at the drop of a dime, Burke genuinely orchestrated the massacre shown in the film.
If you're part of a crew, nobody ever tells you that they're going to kill you. doesn't happen that way.
It starts with stoned getaway driver Stax Edwards, based on real criminal Parnell Stephen Edwards, who was indeed shot to death after illegally parking the getaway van instead of getting rid of the evidence. And in reality, Tommy was promised to officially become a made man for executing Edwards. Frankie Carbone is found hanging in a frozen meat truck, although the character is said to be a composite of two different men involved in the heist, Angelo Seppi and Richard Eaton, while the film shows Maury getting whacked by Tommy with an ice pick to the back of the skull. In reality, Martin Krugman's body was never found. As for Frenchie McMahon, his corpse is seen dumped in a garbage truck, but in reality, his dead body was found in a parked car with a bullet in his head 5 months after the heist. A major fatality in the film that differs from the real case is that of Tommy DeSimone himself. We see Tommy getting shot in the back of the head by the Gambinos in retaliation for Billy Bats.
So his mother couldn't give him an open coffin at the funeral.
In reality, some claim it was John Gotti himself who pulled the trigger on Tommy, out of revenge for killing a protege of his in 1974. And another theory suggests that Paul Vario had Tommy murdered for attempting to sexually assault Karen, with whom Vario was allegedly having an affair while Henry was in jail. Whatever the case, DeSimone disappeared at age 28, and details of his murder remain a mystery. Human bones found beneath Robert's lounge in 1980 were unidentified, but believed to be what was left of DeSimone and bookie Martin Krugman. By the time 1980 comes around in the film, Henry's chaotic drug addiction and surreptitious salesmanship were also accurately presented. In real life, he and Jimmy profited handsomely from the sale of drugs right under Paulie's nose for years. The same goes for Hill's extramarital affairs, with Janice Rossi standing in for real-life mistress Linda, and Sandy inspired by another girlfriend named Robin Cooperman. Henry's narcotics trafficking ultimately led to his arrest by the feds in 1980, similar to what we see on screen. Certain that Henry would inform on them, Jimmy and Paulie attempted to have him killed. And so, Hill became what he always despised, a big stinking rat who turned state's evidence on his close mafia cohorts.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
And now it's all over.
He entered the Federal Witness Protection Program, living the rest of his days
Like a schnook.
and an average nobody. In an extra dose of realism, Scorsese cast federal prosecutor Ed McDonald, the same agent who handled Hill's criminal case in real life. According to McDonald, their discussion was simplified for the movie, but in reality, Henry showed up with his wife and 2 kids, his wife's parents, and 2 of his girlfriends, trying to get them all into witness protection, which went about as smoothly as you might imagine. McDonald described the situation as bedlam. It's worth noting that one of the biggest crimes of Henry Hill's life was excluded from the film entirely. In 1978 and 79, Hill was involved in a scandalous college basketball points-shaving crime. At Jimmy Burke's request, Henry helped convince a group of basketball players to illegally manipulate the point spread in certain games to cover the betting line and make large sums of money. This incident was part of the evidence used against the real Burke in Hill's testimony when he accidentally mentioned it in passing, apparently unaware that point shaving was unlawful. Another crime omitted from the film was Hill purportedly wooing cosmetics tycoon Estee Lauder while his goons ransacked her glitzy Manhattan apartment for around $1 million worth of valuables. Scorsese decided that these crimes, and others like them, were unnecessary to tell Henry Hill's story in the film, already an epic of illicit activity as it was. As the end of the film updates the audience that Hill was still in witness protection in 1990, it also notes his 1987 arrest on narcotics conspiracy charges in Seattle. This also happened to Hill in real life, leading to a downward spiral of booze and drugs that would persist for decades, including multiple arrests, despite the movie claiming he had been clean since 1987. In 1989, Henry and Karen legitimately ended their marriage of 25 years. In 1990, Henry Hill was kicked out of the Witness Protection Program after publicly revealing his identity upon the theatrical release of Goodfellas. Attempting to capitalize on his celebrity, he would spend the next 2 decades peddling memorabilia and making public appearances, earning whatever meager living he could by recounting his days in the mafia on talk shows and other exploitative TV programs. On June 12, 2012, one day after his 69th birthday, Henry Hill passed away from issues related to heart disease. Karen, now 75, remains in witness protection. As for Jimmy Burke, he died of cancer in 1996 while serving a 20-to-life murder sentence in a New York penitentiary. Paul Vario died in prison in 1988. As you can tell, Martin Scorsese took a few liberties with Goodfellas, but made considerable efforts to tell the real story of a mid-level mob man as authentically as possible. And at the same time, he helped define gangster movies and true crime cinema as we know it. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Videos channel. Tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company, and we appreciate your support.